Greetings and salutations. Today we'll be covering the haunting case of the Tallman family. In the chill of a December night in 1987, a story unfolded in the relatively unobtrusive town of Horicon, Wisconsin. Alan Tallman, a wary father, was pushed to the brink. For too long he had endured the unexplainable horrors that plagued his once peaceful abode. And on this fateful night, with the holiday season approaching, he decided it was time to confront the malevolent force that had tormented his family. With a resolute demeanor, Tallman stormed into his living room, his voice echoing throughout the eerie silence of the house as he shouted, "Get out of my house." His words, filled with a desperate conviction, hung heavy in the air, challenging the unseen malevolence that had taken residence within. Yet there was no response, as the darkness remained steadfast, refusing to yield any sign of its presence. Undeterred, Tallman bellowed once more, as if daring this elusive specter to reveal itself. He held his breath as his heart was pounding in his chest, anticipating a confrontation that never materialized. The specter would remain elusive, its intentions hidden in the shadows. Weeks passed and Alan's life continued on its troubled course. Late one night, after a long shift at work, he arrived home in the eerie stillness of 2 a.m. The world outside his car seemed eerily calm, but as he approached his garage, an eerie gust of wind began to bellow, stopping him dead in his tracks. The sound itself seemed unnatural and unsettling, which compelled him to follow it, leading him to the very edge of his garage. Amidst this howling tempest, a chilling, disembodied voice pierced through the winds, sending shivers down Alan's spine. It whispered in a sinister allure, beckoning him closer. In the enigmatic tale of the Tallman house of Horicon, Wisconsin, we are left to ponder the mysteries that surrounded Alan's life. Only by going deeper into the case can we begin to surmise what malevolent forces dwelled within his home, and why would it remain hidden and defy all attempts to directly confront it. As the investigation moves forward into the case, an event which would prove pivotal as it set the stage for the inexplicable events that followed occurred on April 13th, 1986, when the Tallman family, consisting of a husband and wife by the names of Alan and Debbie Tallman, along with their 3 young children, a boy and 2 girls, relocated to their new residence in the quaint farming town of Horicon, Wisconsin. This house, they believed, was the embodiment of their dreams, a place where they envisioned a peaceful and harmonious life. Alan, the family's breadwinner, had secured a position as a shift supervisor at a local manufacturing plant. His work often demanded long hours that stretched late into the night, leaving Debbie to tend to their 3 children. In those initial days, the Tallman household appeared to be the epitome of domestic bliss. However, unsettling occurrences would begin to surface on February of 1987, casting a long shadow over their idyllic life. It all began innocently enough when the family decided to purchase a bunk bed from a second-hand shop driven by their family's growing needs. And as Alan assembled the bunk beds in the basement, an eerie shift occurred within the household. Days after the bunk's arrival, the children began to fall ill, a strange and distressing turn of events for the family. This was deeply perplexing as the Tallman children had rarely experienced any sort of illness in the months and years leading up to this ominous development. Now, the once healthy youngsters were frequenting the doctor's office at a steady rate, with Debbie shuttling them for medical attention multiple times a week. In some harrowing instances, all 3 children required medical care within the same week. The connection between the bunk beds and the sudden unexplained illness is a chilling enigma that continues to baffle those who investigate the case. It is at this point that it is believed that a malevolent force had been unleashed within the walls of their dream home. As the journey continues, the bunk beds become only part of the unsettling and eerie aspects of the case. In the fateful month of May, the Tallmans decided to bring their bunk beds upstairs, placing it in the room adjacent to where their son slumbered. That night, the young boy drifted into sleep, and as it happened, the room was shrouded in an unsettling silence. But then, an eerie event transpired, one that would become etched in the family's collective memory. The radio in their son's room sprang to life of its own accord, the dial moving between the channels as if guided by an unseen force. Alarmed by this inexplicable phenomena, the boy rushed to his parents in the living room, trembling with fear. Debbie and Alan, though undoubtedly concerned, initially dismissed this as a product of their son's imagination. Perhaps he had misinterpreted a malfunctioning electronic device, and in a bid to reassure him, they would promptly remove the radio from his room and encourage him to return to sleep. At this juncture, it is understandable that they might have attributed these eerie events to mere imagination or nightmares. After all, no member of the household other than that child had encountered anything particularly unusual. However, the tranquility of their lives would soon be shattered. Several weeks later, while Alan was engrossed in painting the basement, an unexpected and inexplicable event unfolded. Debbie, sensing the need for a break, called Alan to join her upstairs, and he dutifully complied, setting his paintbrush down on the edge of the pan as he departed. Yet upon his return, he was met with a perplexing sight. The paintbrush had somehow moved from the pan to the paint can handle first. This occurrence may seem to defy the laws of physics, at least in Alan's view, due to him knowing without a shadow of a doubt he had not executed that specifically inconvenient maneuver. However, despite his internal bewilderment, he chose to keep this incident to himself, harboring skepticism about the presence of any malevolent entity in their house. Yet, little did the Tallman family know their lives were on the precipice of a haunting reality that would seemingly defy explanation. In the darkness that cloaked their dream home, it appeared as if sinister forces were at play, and the seeds of the haunting had already been sown. The family would only be left with the question of what lay hidden in their ordinary residence that could cause such a nightmare to grip their family. As the layers on this mystery were peeled back, more incidents would begin to occur, as physical manifestations, or at least what the family believed were physical manifestations, involving a malevolent presence with crimson eyes, began to occur. This started with their young daughter, who had been sleeping in the very bunk bed that had become the focal point of the inexplicable events. One night, she recounted a chilling tale to her parents, a tale that sent shivers down their spines. She spoke of a woman with eyes like burning embers, a woman who appeared in her room during the darkest hours of the night. This spectral visitor was stated to have the uncanny ability to conjure flames within the room. Said flames had supposedly danced and flickered, only to vanish without leaving a physical trace. Faced with this escalating nightmare, the Tallmans sought solace and aid from their pastor, Wayne Dobratz. In his presence, the very air of the home seemed to grow heavy with malevolence, as if the unseen darkness which had taken root in the home was perturbed. The pastor, sensing evil at work, attributed the malevolent influence to that of the devil himself. He urged the family to attend church regularly in the hopes of warding off this insidious spirit. Little did they know that this would only serve to further incite the wrath of the unseen. In the days that followed, the Tallman's home became a cacophony of otherworldly activity. Mysterious voices echoed throughout the corridors. Doors swung open and slammed shut. The apparition with crimson eyes, whom they have come to think of as the Burning Witch, grew bolder and bolder still with each visitation. The family was now ensnared in a relentless nightmare as their lives began to unravel in the face of this incomprehensible evil. As the torment persisted, Alan, now consumed by frustration and despair, dared confront the entity that had wreaked havoc upon his family. With an air of defiance, he would issue a challenge, goading the unseen, as mentioned above, to target him instead of his children. But his provocation would only yield silence, leaving his family clinging to the fragile hope that the worst was behind them. However, this hope would prove tragically premature, as a mere 3 weeks later, Alan returned home from work, and he would be summoned by a voice that emanated from the shadows, beckoning to draw nearer. As he ventured towards the source of the voice, he was met with only the howling winds. Turning back towards his front door, the voice would pierce the night air once more, compelling him to look back towards the garage. This time, he would witness a horrifying sight. an inferno engulfing the structure. Panic surged through him. He rushed inside, only to discover that the garage bore no traces of fire. The world outside would seem perfectly normal, as if it was untouched by the surreal specter that he had witnessed. However, the inexplicable horrors were far from over. As he re-entered his home, his lunch pail was violently hurled across the room by an unseen force, as if it were a malevolent declaration of the entity's unyielding presence. With no recourse and a sense of powerlessness, Alan sought refuge in his daughter's room, where he had taken to sleeping on the floor in order to comfort his terrified girls. But the vengeful spirit of the burning witch was not finished yet. In the dead of night, Alan would wake to an ominous fog filling the room, an ethereal shroud that obscured all but the most chilling of sounds. This was a voice that echoed throughout the haze, proclaiming, "You're dead." Moments later, he found himself in the kitchen with his wife, Debbie, his voice stolen by fear, his body trembling, and tears streaming down his face. In the wake of these nightmarish experiences, Alan knew he could not leave his family alone in this haunted abyss. Desperate to protect his children, he made arrangements for a relative to stay with them until he returned from work. This relative was a skeptic to the tales of the supernatural. They would have their skepticism shattered that very night. He too beheld the visage of a burning witch. It was to the point that he would scream in abject terror as he fled the room. This would cause Debbie to become alarmed and confused, demanding an explanation. This was the breaking point that strengthened Debbie's resolve to abandon the haunted abode, vowing never to return. As the Tallman family had left, a new family would take up residence in the now infamous home, thereby setting the stage for a new chapter in the enigma. Eventually, the show Unsolved Mysteries would descend upon the scene, capturing the eerie legend of the Tallmans in an episode that would captivate viewers across the nation. Yet, to the bewilderment of all, the new occupants of the house, as well as the intrepid film crew, would encounter no supernatural occurrences and see no trace of the malevolent spirit that had once terrorized the Tallman family, and it had seemingly vanished into the ether as the family had left. Equally perplexing was the fact that the Tallmans themselves, after the harrowing ordeal, found respite in a new city. Once there, their lives took a turn away from the horrors that stalked them, and they never again experienced the nightmarish visitations of the burning witch or any other supernatural entities. However, this baffling case would not be laid to rest without a share of theories and conjecture milling about. The Committee for the Scientific Investigation of the Paranormal proposed an intriguing hypothesis that the Tallmans had been unwitting victims of a gas leak, leading to hallucinations and their descent into terror. This theory gained a notable amount of traction, fueled by a revelation that the Wisconsin Power and Light Company had replaced faulty gas fittings in several homes around the vicinity of their own former abode. Oddly enough, the Tallman's home was conspicuously absent from the list of residences receiving attention. Another theory, admittedly a tenuous one at best, but nonetheless thought-provoking, posits that the Tallmans may have unwittingly fallen victim to a more insidious intruder, black mold. It is worth considering that the bunk beds, which were acquired from a second-hand store, could have potentially harbored this hidden menace within their wood frame, and that the family noted that the apparition of the witch only really happened once the bunk bed was brought upstairs. Intriguingly, this theory finds some support in the timeline of events. The children being smaller and closer to the bunk beds would experience the haunting sooner, and the black mold, which is known to release toxic spores, can induce both hallucinations and many of the symptoms that the children had spontaneously begun to suffer from. It is conceivable that the children were more vulnerable to the effects due to the proximity and due to their less developed immune systems, meaning that they were forced to bear the brunt of this insidious presence. However, this raises notable challenges due to it being improbable that the Tallmans family, over the course of their stay, would have remained oblivious to the telltale signs of black mold. Symptoms such as sneezing, allergic reaction, severe rashes, and more commonly associated with black mold exposure were seemingly absent from the symptoms that had manifested around the children. There are also those who believe that the spirit itself might just have been attached to the area and have been aggrieved by the family. However, there is little evidence other than conjecture to support this theory. In the eerie odyssey of the Tallman family's tale, we traversed through the treacherous terrain while treading the line between the supernatural and the sensible. From their haunting home to the harrowing encounters with the burning witch, investigators have unearthed unsettling secrets, which have spiraled into speculative solutions. Yet, as we stand in the shadowy space between certainty and speculation, the story of the Tallmans remains a tantalizing tableau of terror, a tale of hauntings and hallucinations, grievous spirits, and ghastly gassing. This family resided where the bounds between dreams and dread blurred. If you remained with me until the end, I thank you, and I do hope you stay tuned and subscribe for more content.